Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Last time I posted a video about finger shape rules, how you curve your fingers and play the keys properly, and that's getting a lot of traction on YouTube, so thank you very much for your support. I'm glad everybody's enjoying that video. Right before that video, for many months, because of the studio relocation, I couldn't make piano videos. But I had some things I recorded in Japan, so I put out something I thought was interesting, like Yamaha's super gigantic music shop, Japanese computerized toilet, and Japanese beer. But apparently a lot more people are attracted to this finger shape rule video, which confirms my theory that you guys are nerds. But for creating those contents, that'll make me a super nerd. It takes a lot of curiosity and dedication to master an art like piano, so if that makes me nerd, I'm okay with that. So today's super boring nerdy topic is how to improve your rhythm. Now rhythm is one of the hardest things to fix yourself because it's very hard to notice that you're playing wrong rhythm. So in this video, I'm going to show you a technique of how to improve your rhythm on your own before your teacher picks it up. I'll be using mostly beginner's repertoire to demonstrate today, but you can actually use the same technique to advanced pieces to improve your rhythm as well. Before I start, as always, I want to say huge thank you to my supporters on patreon.com and YouTube membership. Thanks to your support, I've been able to purchase some equipment that's necessary to make these videos, and it's been a huge encouragement as I try to grow this community little by little. And if you're kind enough to support me for $3 or $10 per month, I'll leave the link to my Patreon page in the description. You can also support me directly from YouTube from right here. These tutorial videos are free for you to watch, and all I ask you in return is to hit the like button. So I'll just give you a moment to do that right now. Thank you. All right, let's start. So take a listen to this. Yay! Did you hear anything wrong about the way I played it? Did you hear how I was failing to hold at the end of each line? It's so obvious in hindsight, but when you're actually learning, and this is a lot of times what I hear from my students, and they don't even notice what they're doing even when I mention it. And that's because there's no beats. What I mean by that is they're not counting beats like they're supposed to. Have you ever wondered why every single music has to have a time signature in the beginning? And right in the beginning, even before the first note. A lot of textbooks will tell you time signature shows you how many beats you have for each measure. And for most of the beginners, the bottom number doesn't matter because it's always 4. Quarter note gets 1 beat. But the top number can be 3, 4, or even 2. But as long as quarter notes are 1 beat, half notes are 2 beats, dotted half notes are 3 beats, why do you have to know how many beats you have for each measure? Well, if you ask me, this is what I tell my students all the time. Time signatures don't just tell you how many beats you have for each measure. They are telling you to count how many beats per measure. They're telling you to start counting so you can play this music properly. So in this music's case, it's 3, 4, so you're gonna count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That'll tell you immediately if you're not holding enough beats for certain notes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Where am I? This time when I failed to hold that last note, immediately my 1, 2, 3 beat counts got off from the measures, and after that, nothing really makes sense. So this may not tell you what exactly you did wrong, but it does tell you there's something that went wrong. When you make a note mistakes like this, when you start playing wrong keys like this, you can tell right away because it just doesn't sound right. When you play the wrong rhythm, however, a lot of times we are so preoccupied by reading notes, using the proper technique and everything else, our natural counting just stops. If you're not playing yourself and listening to somebody else skipping beats or not holding notes, it's so obvious to you. But while you're playing, you just can't notice it. So how do you solve this problem? Well, if the problem is that you're not counting while you're playing, just count it. And what I mean is count out loud. Just say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, just like I did, like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now the reason why you count out loud is because it's impossible for your brain not to be counting while your mouth is counting. But it's totally possible for your brain to stop counting while thinking it's counting if you're not counting out loud. And there's no way for us to tell. Especially when I'm teaching, there's no way for myself to just open up their head and look inside their brain and see if they're counting and how they're counting. So oftentimes in my lessons, I ask my students to count out loud when the rhythm is not going well. And 9 out of 10 times, when the students are counting out loud, all the rhythmic problem just goes away. And if there is anything wrong with the counting itself, then by having them count out loud, I can actually hear how they're counting and why the rhythmic problem is occurring. But I have to admit, a lot of students hate counting out loud and they try not to do that as much as possible. I understand it's a little cumbersome. A lot of my students say counting messes up my playing. Well, it's not true. Counting is not messing up your playing. Your playing is already messed up. But counting makes you realize it. So by not counting, you're just sweeping the problem under the rug, but it's still there. I can hear it. Anybody else can hear it. You're the only one who's not hearing it because you're not counting. When we are listening to music, we have this natural counting. So that's why when we are listening, and when somebody else makes a rhythm mistake, it's so obvious. It sounds like you're kind of tripping over. It just gives you this weird feeling when you hear wrong rhythm. But you don't feel that when you're playing because your brain's preoccupied with many other things and it just stops counting. But if you're counting out loud, then it's impossible for your brain not to be counting while you're counting out loud. So you're really making sure that your brain's counting. In other words, if your brain's already counting like it's supposed to, it's not that much harder to verbalize it. So yes, counting out loud takes a little more brain power, but it's just a teeny bit more. So how about using metronome instead? Now, metronome is a great tool if you're rushing or slowing down involuntarily. So it'll tell you, those mechanical beats will tell you if you're getting faster or slower, and then it'll give you a chance to correct it. And eventually, you will have your mind metronome so that it'll keep you same speed all the time. However, it does not give you the beat numbers and it won't help you in a situation like this. Yeah, I was perfectly together with a metronome. Well, you're missing the beats and you don't even notice it. Especially if you're playing the same thing over and over, you can't keep track of how many times you played it, but that's not the right way to think about it. Listen to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, So when you make the same mistake while counting out loud with the metronome, for the first time you start noticing, oh, I'm missing some beats, I'm missing some notes. And also if you count the beats, you know you have this one chord at the beginning of the measure. So after you count 1, that's when your right hand starts moving. It visually helps you to tell you when to stop the repeated pattern. That's an added benefit of counting out loud or counting inside. Of course, you hear always counting in your head 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, whatever the time signature calls for. But a lot of times what I see in the lessons is that students, especially at the RE level, are not counting. Actually, not only in RE level, even advanced students sometimes fail to count and obviously miss a beat or two and don't even notice it. So it really doesn't hurt to just play through the ones, counting out loud, to double check that you're not doing anything funny without noticing it. So when you have eighth notes, because the eighth notes are only half a beat, you're going to divide those 1, 2, 3, 4 into 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and wherever you have eighth notes, you're going to add a syllable end and subdivide those beats like this. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Even if you don't have eighth notes, it doesn't hurt to say 1 and 2 and like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if I play whole thing, it'll look like this. By the way, the title of this piece in the newer books is My Favorite Creature or something. But because I'm using the one that's printed before, I'm going to use this controversial version with Christopher Columbus in it. Oh no. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Because a lot of students fail to count, I hear a lot of versions like this. Again, you're playing all the right keys at very random timing. When the time signature tells you to count 4 beats per measure, they mean it. If you don't need time signature in the beginning, they won't put it. But when the time signature is telling you to please count 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you don't, then of course the whole piece can be messed up and you don't even notice it. And as you advance more and more, the rhythm becomes impossible to play accurately without counting when it involves something like syncopation like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Guess what happens? And I mean, this happens in daily teaching all the time. You would think I'm exaggerating, but believe me, this happens all the time, and students have no idea what the wrong rhythm is. But as soon as I make them count out loud, even though they don't want to, the problem fixes itself and they don't even know what mistake they were making before. But that's okay because problem fixes itself. And when you have 16th notes, the counting becomes 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Or you can just simply go 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4N. Notice either version, you're playing eighth notes on 4 and end. But you can still insert E and A if you want to keep it consistent. So instead of playing this famous canon like this, you can count properly and go 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So as you saw, rhythm is all about figuring out which note comes which beat or which syllable and playing those notes on those correct spots. But if you are not counting the beats, all of that means nothing because there's no grid to play those notes on. And it's very important, I'm gonna say this again, you gotta count out loud. You cannot just do it in your head because the problem, remember, is that your brain stops counting and you don't even notice it. So if you're counting out loud, then it assures you that you're actually counting in your brain. And if you can count out loud correctly, most likely you're actually playing that rhythm correctly. So when you stop counting out loud, your brain will continue to count in the same way and preserve the rhythm. Of course, when you're actually performing, you don't count out loud, or when you're playing something really long, you can't possibly keep counting. But it's really important that you get this habit of counting and feeding the beat so that when you actually stop counting, it continues inside your brain. That is why I force my students, especially at beginning level, to count out loud, even they don't want to. Because later on, music is going to be longer and it's going to be harder to keep up with counting. So they want to do something called spot counting, where they only count those measures or sections that they have problem with. And hopefully rest of the way, they can feel the rhythm correctly. But if you don't do that at the beginner level, when are you going to learn it? While dealing with more complicated rhythm, that's going to be a lot harder. So my poor beginner students are sometimes stuck on the same piece for weeks and weeks just because they don't count at home. So we fix the rhythm at lesson and they can count out loud no problem. But if I tell them to count out loud at home, if they don't, they'll definitely come back with the wrong rhythm again and they're not really learning this necessary skill. And if you're a self-learner, you're going to have to do this to yourself. You're going to count out loud, make sure there's no question, make sure there's no weird things. And recording also helps too, because when you record and listen to yourself, and if you are skipping beats and stuff, in hindsight, it's a lot easier to notice it. While you're playing, not so. So I just spent last 10 minutes or so trying to tell you to count the beats out loud. How boring and nerdy is that? But you're welcome. Alright, that's it for today. If you liked this video or learned something, please hit the like button so YouTube will know this is good content and start spreading to other people. If you're interested in one-on-one lessons or consultation with me, you can make an appointment from my online studio website. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. I really enjoy reading everybody's comments. I'll try to answer as much as possible, as long as you hit that like button. Again, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you won't miss my future videos. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.